Greetings, everyone. We are back for another wonderful episode of the show, D-Live, the Convo series. And let me adjust my light here. I always get the feedback. People start yelling at me. I didn't have enough light, not enough light. Room Raider would knock me off a point for not having a plant like right here somewhere. But anyway, we'll make the best of it. We are live tonight with Flottman, and it's super cool to have Ann on the show this evening. Really excited to hear her story, which is really unique, I think, and she's had some great life experiences that have prepared her for this next role and this next chapter in Hamilton County Domestic Relations Court, which she's running for judge there in, 78 days? Somebody correct me on that.
76.
70.
No, I think you're right. 78.
Something like that, like right around.
Something like that. 7 weeks.
Right around the corner. It's coming up.
11 weeks. Yeah.
It's coming up quick. So, Ann, we've got some folks joining us right now, which is great. Just a reminder, everyone, please hit the share button so we can put as many eyeballs on this as possible. Get the story out here in Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Around Ann and her campaign, so please share this post. And with that, we've got some folks joining us. And so, Ann, welcome. We're glad to have you on the show tonight.
I'm thrilled to be with you, Derek. I'm thrilled about your run for City Council next year, and excited about talking to somebody with your background and experience. So thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate that. It's kind of like the worst kept secret in Cincinnati that I'll be back. They can't get rid of me. Running for council again in 21. We'll everybody, since we're talking about it, there will be an announcement coming up, like a more formal one. But I appreciate that, and so you having your stamp of approval was amazing. So thank you. Let's just kind of kick it off. You know, the gist of the show is we want to hear about you. We want to hear the person and the story behind the candidate, just what we typically see or hear on a website or a stump speech someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to learn more about you. And your story is super intriguing. So, let me just kick it over to you, and you can share a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Oh, thank you, Derek. So I've been a domestic relations attorney since 2001. Before that, I was a teacher. So I graduated and began teaching high school English, and was planning to go to law school, but because I put myself through college waiting tables and being a bartender, I couldn't quite figure out how to do that for law school. And then right about the time I was trying to work that out, at age 22, I met my handsome husband, Tom. And so there went law school, in came marriage. So we got married when I was 23, and he was 27, so clearly a total cradle robber.
And this was only 4 or 5 years ago, am I right?
Right, you're right. And then I took a job teaching in the Virgin Islands. So we moved down there. Our oldest son was born there, and we moved back when he was little and had 2 more babies right away. So I taught for 5 years high school, had the 3 boys, and then I began working on my master's at Xavier. And when I completed it, they asked me to join their program and teach there, which was just a blast.
So let me stop you right there, because I know everybody that's watching this right now and everybody that will be watching it, which is going to be a lot of folks, want to hear this Virgin Islands story. So tell us a little bit more. I need to know about that. First of all, how'd you decide to go down there? And then secondly, why'd you decide to come back?
Right, that's what my kids want to know, the second part. So I had student taught in South America in a little town in Colombia that was kind of a nasty little place, but it was great. So I knew that there were schools all over the world where you could teach, and I started applying to them. And so after we got married, and I'd accepted a job on the west side at Taylor High School way out in Cleves, I was teaching there. Out of the blue, I put in this application like a year and a half before. I got a call from the headmaster of Antilles School, a little small school, sort of like a Seven Hills, where it's from 3-year-olds to 12th grade. And so Tom and I thought, this is an opportunity. We don't have children. Let's do it. So we moved down there, and I taught 3 years there, and our oldest son was born there. Coincidentally, it's his 36th birthday today. He and his wife Melissa and our only grandchild Ronan live there now.
Oh, wow.
So even though he moved back when he was like 7 weeks old, I guess he got that sandwich with his toes. So he's an ER nurse in the hospital where he was born, and his wife runs the budget for the U.S. parks there.
That's an awesome story. Very cool. And speaking of Colombia, now, you know, a lot of people know that are my friends on here watching this, that Colombia has a special place in my heart, having lived there the last three winters now, and it's just a magical place. So what city were you in or near in Colombia?
I was in Barranquilla, so I was near Santa Marta and Cartagena, which were beautiful. Barranquilla, not so beautiful, but I went to Medellin and Bogota and really got to see the countryside and loved the people. And back then, right now, I just have a good accent. I don't really speak English. Then I did. I was quite fluent.
Wonderful. Well, hablo español y
okay, muy bien.
Conozco Barranquilla. I know Barranquilla. I've been there. Yeah, on the Caribbean coast, and it's a magical place. And you're right, the people are wonderful, and the food there is amazing. So, but moving on, or else we might just go on vacation right now if we can. Yeah, that's a great story. But you know, I think it's pertinent for this reason. You know, when you travel, certainly when you spend time in another country and other cultures, I think it gives you, you know, a worldview. It gives you an appreciation for other people, other cultures, folks that don't necessarily look like you. And so I think those are life experiences that, you know, that stay with us and that help to kind of make us more well-rounded. Would you agree with that?
Agree 100%. It has meant the world to me to do all the traveling that we have done. We did a lot with our children. None of it extravagant, always budget, lots of camping, lots of bargain hotels. But we tried to get them to see the world, and they've explored it on their own. Our son and daughter-in-law in St. Thomas took their honeymoon in Thailand. Our middle son in Colorado went climbing and skiing in Kyrgyzstan, which I had to look up where that was. But yeah, you learn that the rest of the world is important too, and you don't have the idea that the United States is the center of the world. And you learn to respect other cultures and also respect the extensive, rich history of other peoples.
I agree.
You learn how to be the odd man out.
Yep.
You know, the minority person, which is a helpful experience.
Well, and I think that could be, I know just from my perspective, whether it be in my police career or now just kind of in the civic realm, in a place like Cincinnati, where it's probably more rich culturally than we really have appreciation for at times. But this helps you, I think, when especially in your next role on the bench, when folks come in front of you and you have a depth of understanding and an appreciation. I think it can be very beneficial.
Yes, thank you. I believe so. And one of the goals that I have for Hamilton County Domestic Relations Court is to increase the diversity in that court. We, in Hamilton County, as you know, we are a big, multicultural, beautiful rainbow, multi-ethnic group of people. And if you go on our domestic relations court, however, it is almost 100% white, 100% from one part of the city, 100% one major religion. Not any diversity in terms of gender orientation, not diversity in terms of ethnicity, not diversity in terms of religion. So for people who are coming through that court, and if I can take a swift detour, domestic relations court is a court that you hope you don't know. I hope you don't know where it is or what it is, because it means if you do know that you've either experienced divorce or you've experienced domestic violence. Those are the two areas that this court handles. So we touch more lives than probably any other court in Hamilton County, and we touch them in really important ways because we're dealing with the things that are most important to people: your children, your family, your home, and your financial livelihood. In addition to that, so that's the divorce side. In the domestic relations side, we're dealing with your personal physical safety and the safety of your loved ones and your children. So that's what we do. So we're dealing with all the county, and I think of the huge percentage of our population that don't look like the people who work there. Mm-hmm. And what does that feel like for them to come into the court? Because remember, Derek, as you know from being a police officer, when you're dealing with people, they're coming in anxious. This is not a happy experience. This
right.
is an anxious, frustrating, painful, frightening experience. So you want to make it as familiar to people as possible.
No, that's great, and let's circle back. Because I want to talk about that in more detail after we kind of get caught up here on the timeline of your backstory. But I think that's very important stuff, because you're right. I mean, most of the time, unfortunately, folks aren't somehow connecting with the police because they're having a really great day. And so we need to be understanding of that. By the same token, you're probably not in domestic relations court because things are going swimmingly in life. And so to the degree that we can make more people feel more comfortable when they're in those situations, then the better. But just to get us caught up to speed, so you were an English teacher, but yet at some point, and I'm trying to enunciate clearly and get my diction right, because I don't want to get a ruler across the fingers like that.
Yeah, that's grammar. Yeah.
I don't know if we're allowed to do that anymore. Probably not. But at some point, you have this notion about, and you're teaching at Xavier. You taught high school. You're teaching at Xavier, but yet you've got a desire for the law. How did that come about?
Well, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I just loved the whole idea, but I couldn't make it happen right out of college, and then met my wonderful husband, had our 3 wonderful sons, enjoyed raising the family, and let me tell you, teaching at Xavier was a blast. I also taught 2 years at NKU. There is just nothing more fun than teaching college kids. They are fabulous. They're fascinating, they're open, they're hilarious, they're just great. So I was loving that, but I had not let go of this 20-year-old dream of going to law school. So finally, at a very big birthday, we'll say it had a 4 at the beginning and a 0 at the end, I said to my husband, who is a lawyer, he ended up running a family company, but he knew what law school was. He went at night while working in his family business. I said, I want to revisit this. And he said, well, you know, what's going to happen in 3 years if you go to law school? How old will you be? And I said, like 43. And he said, and if you don't go, how old will you be? Mm-hmm. I'll be 43. So with his support and help, and also the patience and tolerance of our 3 children, we did this. So I did it during the day. And after my first year, I began working in the domestic relations court as a clerk in Claremont County. And then after my second year, I was so fortunate, I got hired as a clerk to Randy Block, who's one of the better known domestic relations attorneys in Cincinnati. And she trained me. And I just stayed in family law. It was a perfect fit for me as a mother, as a teacher, as a volunteer. Just about everything I've ever done in my whole life has been about children. So to be in family law was just right for me.
No, that's amazing, and it seems like a great fit. And continuing on, you're more than prepared to take on this role, and I think it really be a great asset to us here in Hamilton County. So, how many years then you've worked as a magistrate? Can you explain a little bit? Folks might not know the difference between a judge. I mean, you still wear the robes, right? And you sit up there. So how does that? What's a magistrate do, and how long were you in that role?
I didn't know what that was either before I went to law school. So absolutely, great question. So in Ohio, judges are elected, and then they hire their magistrates. And different counties have a different allocation of duties. But I was a practicing family law attorney. I was head of the domestic relations department at Wood and Lamping downtown, and a certified family law specialist, and just motoring along in my career when a judge in Warren County asked me to be a magistrate, and I told him I was very honored, but no. And a couple nights later, I mentioned to my husband, and he was like, maybe we ought to talk about this hand. I'm like, no, it's all the way up the road. It's half the money. He goes, but would you be working every weekend? And what kind of mood would you be in when you got home? And I'm like, what's wrong with my dad? So,
he's a brave man. Tom's a brave man.
He was like, whoop. So I saw the judge, and he, like a year later, and he goes, well, we've got another position open. So I'm like, well, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. So it's been great. I've been there since 2014. So what a magistrate does in Warren County is the judge is, again, elected, and he or she hires their magistrates. And we're called magistrate judges. We're assistant judges. The difference is when I write a decision, so I'm hearing the same cases as the judge, but when I write a decision on custody, on spousal support, child support, parenting time, property division, domestic violence, whatever it is, it's going to sit for 14 days to allow anybody, either party, to file objections with the judge and tell him that I made a mistake. Either I applied the law incorrectly or I misunderstood the facts. And then he or she, whoever the judge is, will adopt that decision after 14 days if nobody objects. So there's just that little bit of because we're not elected, so there needs to be a method for the citizens, the residents who have elected that judge, to make sure he or she is saying, yes, this is correct. So that's really the only difference. I hear everything that my judge hears. Hamilton County might be sliced up a little bit differently. Claremont is the same as we are. It just depends on how it works. But that's what a magistrate does.
And so, in essence, kind of in layman's terms for folks, the magistrate is the judge of the case. Like if you go in there, you would be in front of them and those types of things. But it's almost where you're the deputy judge. And, the workload is such that just one person in that role can't do everything. And so the judge will hire these various magistrates to run the docket, but they have the ultimate kind of sign-off approval under the auspices of kind of how you laid it out. But yeah, in essence, you're like the judge. It just needs to get that final seal of approval. But in that way, like you've been running a courtroom for 6+ years now in this role. So there's like preparation like A+.
Yes, I've probably heard over 1,500 domestic violence petitions, and I've issued well over 1,000 decisions in every other aspect of domestic relations law. One thing I want to point out to you, and thank you, you totally get what a magistrate is, but one thing that's important for people to understand in domestic relations is we don't have a jury. And so the person who's hearing your case, whether it's a magistrate or a judge, in all likelihood, what they say, what they decide is there's a really good chance that that's what you're going to be stuck with. That is going to be the decision. Because unlike criminal law, like Derek, if you pull me over and I'm below a 2.21, like I'm getting an OVI, right? End of story. In domestic relations law, we have a list of factors for things that we're to take into consideration when we're determining spousal support. Not like A, B, C equals D. It's think about this, think about this, think about this. 13 factors for spousal support, 11 factors for child custody that we're to consider. So all we really have to say in a decision is we considered these, and we believe the child should be with dad on these days and mom with these days, and mom should make the decision about school and dad should make the decisions about extracurricular or whatever. And these are momentous decisions that impact people's everyday lives and their sense of well-being and their ability to move forward. So it's critical, in my view, that you have somebody who has my background and my experience to do this job. You just cannot walk in off the street and be a lawyer and do this any more than I could be a criminal lawyer. There is zero chance that I could do the job that, for example, Jennifer Branch and Allison Hathaway or running for. Like, I do not know criminal law. I knew criminal lawyers that I would send you to.
Right.
I don't really understand that because my whole career has been about domestic relations. But that is one thing that people don't understand is you're getting one magistrate or one judge, and their decision, if it's written in a way that acknowledges that they consider these factors, it's going to be real hard for you to change it.
Right. And so in my police career, and I retired in 2016, and most of that time with the city of Mason, we had a lot of interaction with domestic relations court, or folks with orders from domestic relations court and child custody. And I mean, when you start talking about custody issues, this is like you're talking about stuff that really cuts to the core of people, of parents, and you have, especially after divorces, and you just all these emotions and everything, and people are so upset, and at times leads to violence, right? And so a lot of times the police are there. We do what was called a standby assist, where you almost had to you're the referee, and there were some cases where it was so it was so acrimonious, and we probably all know in our personal lives, scenarios or people that have been in this position, heaven forbid we were, to where they were told you have to do your custody exchange on Friday night at 6:00 at the police station, because it's like, cats and dogs, oil and water going at it, and it got dangerous for people. So in that, and so let's touch a little bit more on what else domestic relations court does. Not only divorces, and figuring all that out, child custody issues. And one issue I'd like to have you touch on in that regard that I get feedback about, or certainly did in my police career, was at times when the fathers felt like they weren't getting a fair shake. Can you explain a little bit about the law surrounding that, but also what other things, for example, protection orders, domestic violence protection orders, and things like that. What are some of the other things that the court's involved in?
So, with regard to your service in Mason, our paths, I don't think cross, but I've had quite a few Mason police officers have to testify in my court, and I'm always so grateful to them because I know that they are coming in after a shift or before a shift to try to help me figure out what's best for a family. But you're right, there's a lot of people that resort to calling the police to assist them in just retrieving their children from the other parent. And yes, our worst case scenario is when we have to have people exchange their children at the police station. That just cannot be what children need to see.
Right.
But people are volatile and acrimonious. And one of my goals in every divorce case is to keep it from becoming a domestic violence case, or to keep it from becoming a domestic relations case, a divorce case that keeps coming back. The ones that keep coming back are the ones where people were not, they don't feel that they were heard, they don't feel that they were dealt with fairly, and so they keep coming back trying to fix it. And of course, that's like the worst thing for children. So when I have cases, I had one this week from 2012. They've been back. There's been over 600 filings during that time. I keep trying to work with them, but their original agreement has been so difficult to change, and so the friction between them has not gotten better. But they're like the worst case scenario. Most people, my belief is, if we can get everybody fairly positioned, if both mother and father, or in these days, we're just going to say if both parents believe that they have gotten a fair shake, then they're going to be able to go forward with the least amount of friction. So it's critical that all parents understand that there is no preference for either parent. In a heterosexual divorce, there's no preference for mother over father. I've had to point out to a number of mothers who say, well, he works all the time, that because he works all the time, you were able to be home with the child. That is his way of providing for the child in the same way that you were changing the diaper and feeding and taking the child to the doctor and the dentist and the play date. Both of those things are critically important, but one is not more important than the other. That's two ways of caring for a child. So in Ohio, we've gotten far more progressive in the last 15 years with a view toward both parents being on equal footing. And it's the same in non-heterosexual relationships. It doesn't matter which parent may actually have donated the egg or donated the sperm that caused this child. That is, it's who was there taking care of the child. So that's the divorce piece. The question you asked me about was domestic violence, which is when there is somebody in a household somebody is experiencing bodily injury or threats of bodily injury or sexual abuse at the hands of a family member or a household member, or in the last couple of years, Derek, we've added dating relationships to family court. Those used to go in the general division. So we hear a lot of those. It's something that I've been wanting to do a long post about because we know that domestic violence is on the increase and child abuse is on the increase since COVID. It's a huge worry for me. I've been posting about it since late March. But I kind of want to give people an idea of exactly what we're talking about because we only hear the worst, the actual murder. But the violence that can go on, I'm sure you saw it as a police officer. I know the most feared call for you is a domestic situation when you're a police officer. It's just part of the fabric of society that we have not been able to reweave and fix, that needs to be fixed. But we hear those a lot. And again, I try to keep the domestic relations cases from being peaceful and resolved in a practical manner so they do not become domestic violence cases, because the frustration that people feel when they're not seeing their children or not being treated fairly is incomprehensible. That just really is something people cannot get over, and understandably so. Not understandable that it becomes violent, but understandable, because that's the most important thing in the world to people is your family.
No, you're absolutely correct, and I can tell everyone out there that's listening to this, and I can just get a sense from Ann in explaining this that her experience in this regard is really priceless because I've experienced that, and I started in law enforcement when I was 21, and really pretty clueless. And you quickly find out what's going on out there and how impactful this is on people's lives, and really they get to the point where they're so frustrated, and it's just building up, and then it explodes. And I think you're 100% correct about this with regard to COVID. We've got the scenario now where the kids are home from school all day, every day. We're supposed to be homeschooling them, but it's so much, and I'm at wit's end, and I'm trying to pay the bills, and maybe I'm out of work, or I've got too much work, and it's 1,000 things, and I just feel like it's this pressure, and you don't know what to do, and it just manifests itself in these outcomes that are just really tragic. It really led to the end of my career because that was my not my final call per se, but I blew my knee out kicking a door in at a stabbing, which was the wife stabbing the husband. And ultimately, after 4 knee surgeries, they said, that's it, you're done kicking doors in, and it's over. But so you just see how impactful this is. And for those of us that have fortunately never experienced that, it's difficult to understand, but it's really, and I think in your role, in my role, and in your role, you've seen just how pervasive it is. And so that's why this position is so important within, we often talk about the criminal aspect of the judiciary, and that's the focus, but this is a very important role here.
It is, and it is important that people who hear these, and for people who haven't fortunately had to do this, the process is, if you have been victimized or you're in fear, you can go to the domestic relations court, and would be that the person that you're afraid of or that caused you harm is a family member or a household member or somebody that you've dated and been in a dating relationship in the last 12 months. So you go before a magistrate, and you go to court, and they make you wait for some period of time, fill out some paperwork. But in an hour or two, at least in Warren County, we try to get you right in. you go before a magistrate, somebody you have no idea who they are, they're up on a bench in a black robe, and you've got to tell them what happened to you. And Derek, I'm sure you interviewed countless people, and you know how hard it is for people to actually talk to you about what just happened to them. And they're often, if they have been routinely victimized, they're unable to put in order like what happened that was super bad and what happened that was not that big of a deal. And so they may start with he closed the checking account, and then maybe a couple minutes later they'll say, and then he pulled me by my hair across the room, or she pistol whipped me or something. They're just, their ability to convey the story to you, it's not like reading a book. They're victims, in many cases, they're victims, and they have been victimized, and they have trouble conceptualizing the story in a way to give it to you. And I'm only mentioning this because it's critical, in my view, that the person hearing that story is trained and can listen and can be empathic, but also you have to be analyzing them as you would a lawyer. You have to do a slight little bit of cross-examination, because you're going to issue an order that may say one parent doesn't get to see the kids, that may say one person in your household, the sheriff or the Mesa Police Department, is going to go take them out of the house then. So it's a draconian order. So you have to make sure that you really have a good feeling about the credibility of the person in front of you.
Right.
The reason I'm emphasizing this, first, because I want people to understand what that process is. So if you have to do it, you know what it is. But second, it's been the practice in Hamilton County. One of the things that I would love to change, that this is the docket, the people coming in to request domestic violence orders, that's the docket they put new and experienced magistrates on to train. And that seems so unwise to me. Why would you put a new magistrate who maybe hasn't been trained about violence and about victims and ask them to make these critical determinations? Either you're going to say, you're going to call it correctly and protect a person, or you're going to call it incorrectly and throw someone out of her or his home, or deprive them of seeing their children until we get back in court, which might be 2 weeks, which is a long time to not see your kids, and it's a long time to sleep on your friend's couch, right? And then you've got this order against you, and there are certain professions where having that order is a problem. So this isn't for rookies. That's my only point. It's one of the things that I find most egregious about the way Hamilton County domestic relations court in the past few decades has been approaching what they do. Something I'd like to see changed.
Well, and you bring up a great point. I mean, believe it or not, sometimes people do tell tall tales, or they embellish to make their side sound a little better. And so you know, if you are in a situation where there's both parties there and you're over there rolling their eyes and the attorney's telling them just be quiet, we'll get to it. But you need to be able to navigate that and figure out where the truth lies, because you're absolutely correct. These are like major life altering decisions that you're making that can have far-ranging impacts, and that we often don't understand. So let's talk about that. I mean, you've talked about one thing, which, I had Fanon Rucker on the show a while ago running for Hamilton County prosecutor, and he's talking about how, in a county that has a significant, African-American population, and others, as I've already laid out, you have a prosecutor's office where there's like 1 or 2 African-American employees out of, over 200 employees. It's just kind of crazy. You're saying it's the same kind of scenario in a domestic relations court. And we know, before AFTAB got into the clerk's office, it's the same kind of thing. This kind of all, I got my uncles and my nieces and my nephews, and I hire them all, give them all jobs and all that. And, that's how it's been around the Hamilton County Courthouse until we've just started, breaking it up in the last, couple election cycles. So we've got that, and we've got what you just talked about. You're putting rookie magistrates in there to make these really tough decisions that they probably need a little seasoning first. What else has been going on there that we need to fix and that you're going to take care of when you get in there?
Well, in addition to the diversity, I'd really love to increase, I know this isn't a sexy topic, but forgive me, the efficiency, because people who come to domestic relations court, you have to assume they're already in a family crisis. That's why they're there. They've got a crisis in their family that they can't resolve themselves. They're coming to the government, which is the domestic relations court, for help. So when we delay their case and we don't give them orders and answers for weeks and months, that family in crisis becomes a family in chaos.
Now, wait a minute. I got to interrupt you right there. You're telling me months? Sometimes it's months?
Or years.
That's
Months
outrageous to me.
I agree with you. It is outrageous. That I don't know what the workflow issue is there. I know that in Warren County, we have about 1/4 of the population. We also have 1/4 of the staff, but we handle almost 2 times as many cases. And I think part of that is our judge and the 4 magistrates all practiced extensively in domestic relations. So we get it, we understand it, we try to move through it. We can be real clear with attorneys and with parties who aren't represented about where we think your case may land, and maybe you want to consider settling it. We can be super helpful. But yeah, Hamilton County, just for example, Derek, when COVID hit on March 14th, the Hamilton County Domestic Relations Court just issued an order saying we are only doing domestic violence. We're not accepting any. We're continuing everything that was for the divorce, even phone conferences. We're not having those. We're continuing everything. They didn't call any attorneys. They just reset everything into May, which then, of course, they had to reset into June or July. For the domestic violence, they were only open from 10 to 2. So please make sure you get away from your abuser during those specific hours so that you can file your petition. So by contrast, Claremont County, Warren County, and Butler County, just for the 3 surrounding us, we all stayed open, but we just moved everything to phone that was a divorce-related matter. We still had the domestic violence in person because that's required. You need to see the person. And we tried to, with our phone conferences, either talk with people about resolution to see where we could go, talk to them about what we could do in the meantime. So, for example, if I had parents who were arguing about what to do, there's no school. What are we going to do for a schedule? I would say, well, we're not in court. I'm not hearing evidence, but would you consider doing X, or would you consider doing Y? And they would, in many of these situations, make a temporary agreement so we could get in court. So it was just not the time to say, I'll talk to you in May, to people. They were already in crisis. Now we're in a global crisis. People are out of work. They don't know when their next paycheck's going to be. They've got their kids on their hands, which we all love our kids, but you got to go to work. That's a problem. And it just seemed to me like not a way to serve the public. I didn't understand why you couldn't do phone conferences. In Warren County, we used our own cell phones. The court, we would have one person at court that would put us on the record, the 2 parties or the 2 attorneys, and then the magistrate. And then we text them when we were off so they could go in the courtroom and turn off the record. It was simple, and it worked. I did mediations by phone. I granted final divorces by phone so people could move on. In Hamilton County, they didn't even accept e-filings until early in April. And it just increased the frustration and anxiety of the people they're supposed to serve. So I just would like to see a refocus to serving the public every way you can.
So, and then it's going to be a scenario where after they do finally open it up in that way, now you might not get your ruling for months, and it's just dragging this out. People are at their wits' end as it is. And so, I don't know. I could understand the frustration there from folks. So let's just, and the topic is fascinating. I could really talk about this stuff all night. And we've been going for 40 minutes already, and at times
Really?
feels like 4 minutes. But it seemed like that's just off the top. There's like 3 serious issues there that are just, for example, that you can fix when you get in there utilizing your experience. Now let me just take a look at the comments. Meg, forgive me, Ganulin, hopefully I pronounced this correctly. Do you know Meg Ann?
It's Gannulin. Meg Gannulin. Yes.
Gannulin. Okay, good. Thank you for correcting me on that. She says hi, first of all, and then she got here a little bit late. So let me remind everyone that you can go back and watch it. The video will stay up, and we will upload it to my YouTube channel, Derek Bauman. If you search me on there, all of the programs are archived there, so you can check it out. But just real quick for Meg's benefit, she says she's apologizes for tuning in late. Why did you just decide to run? Just in a couple of words, because you've been doing it as a magistrate, and this is the next step. You touched on, or just briefly.
That's a great question. I was not going to run when they called me. I was planning to actually retire in a couple of years. My husband's already retired, but the opportunity to serve the public of Hamilton County, I just could not turn down. I've seen too many things go wrong in this county with that particular court that I'm now super aware of because I work in a court that's well run. And I just couldn't turn down the opportunity to be of continued service to my home county, not just Warren County. So thanks for that question, Gannulin.
That's a perfect answer, and really, that breadth of experience that you have, I think is going to perfectly prepare you. So as we close, just let's talk about, I dropped your website in the comments here, flottmanforjudge.com. And folks, now one of the weird things, and we've talked about this with the other judicial candidates, is that for example, like it takes money to run a campaign. These yard signs and such don't pay for themselves, right? But yet it's this arcane law where you're running, but you can't ask people for money. But I'm allowed to on your behalf. So you call people. There's other judges have to call and talk to people, and then hand the phone off to their person that's working with them, the fundraising and such. So it's super challenging right now. So everyone this is one of the most qualified people I've ever seen for a role. And she doesn't need to do it. She could retire, but she wants to serve us and using her breadth of experience, and I think she's the best person for the job. So go on to flottmanforjudge.com, drop a little Scooby snack on there to help the campaign in these final 70-some days, how much ever it is. Folks can also, I assume, sign up to volunteer. What else is going on around the campaign? If I want to help you, what can I do to get involved?
Well, there's all kinds of boots on the ground activities you can do. Like you can do what's called Lit Drop. I had to say, what is that? When they told me it's dropping literature in various neighborhoods. We're not obviously knocking on doors, but we're just putting the judicial slate, because I'm on a fabulous slate with 12 other candidates, all equally qualified as I am, some maybe more, for their particular roles. So there's that. There's phone banking, where you call voters and make sure they know how to get their request in for a ballot, a mail-in ballot, because it's a 2-step process. You have to request the ballot, get it, then mail it back in.
Right.
So there's that. I would say, Derek, the most important thing that people could do who know me or who want to see me elected is to tell the people you know. When you get your ballot, or when you get in the ballot box, there is not a designation of party. And that's good, because I'm running with the endorsement of the Democratic Party, but I have many friends on both sides. I have supported good judges on both sides. This is a nonpartisan position. There is absolutely nothing that will come before me that it would matter what my political persuasion is. So that's the way it should be, but unfortunately, if you haven't had a domestic relations court, or you're not a domestic relations case, and if you're not a lawyer, how are you supposed to know what judges to vote for? Oh, well, I'll just vote for the ones that my party has endorsed. Well, guess what? That information isn't on the ballot.
Right.
So the most important thing that anybody can do for me is to educate your friends and your network to vote for Ann Flottman for judge. If you believe that I'm qualified for the position, I need all of your votes.
I love it. That's passion. I'm ready to go kick in some doors. Right now, they told me no more door kicking in for me, but I'm ready to kick in some doors for Ann Flottman for judge right now because I think you're amazingly qualified. And not only that, as part of the show here, just a good person and with a great story. And so that's amazing stuff. So that's it. 45 minutes. This is amazing. It's gone so fast because this is great stuff, and we could talk about it probably. I'm thinking between the two of us, Ann, we could probably talk about this, most of the night, if not all night.
I think we've had some evenings before to share. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for joining me, everyone. Again, this will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Derek Bauman. Check it out at Derek Bauman, Twitter, Instagram, all your social media channels. We've got some additional great guests, booking some more right now coming up in the coming days. So please stay tuned for that, and continue to share this, please, if you would, through your networks, like Ann mentioned. Just the word of mouth, getting her name out there will be very beneficial. So please do share this post. And with that, Ann, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Derek. It was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it so much, and thank you, everyone. Cincinnati and Greater Hamilton County, have a wonderful night. Be safe. Take care of each other, and hopefully you won't end up in front of Ann in domestic relations court in Hamilton County when she takes the bench. All right. Thank you, Ann, and everybody have a fantastic evening. We'll see you next time.